All right, welcome to this explainer. Today we're uncovering the sheer scale and the high-stakes drama of the human body's ultimate survival mechanisms. We walk around every single day taking our existence completely for granted. But under the surface, there is an absolute masterclass in engineering happening every single second.
So, let's start with a really fundamental problem. We live in a world that is, frankly, chaotic. It's a harsh, unpredictable external environment where life genuinely exists on a razor's edge. Temperatures swing wildly, food sources vary, physical threats are literally everywhere. So how do you stay alive? How exactly does your body maintain perfect internal harmony when everything on the outside is just pure chaos?
Well, the answer actually starts with a major shift in perspective. You see, you aren't just one single organism. You are this incredible, bustling aggregate of roughly 35 to 40 trillion individual human cells. That's trillions of independent living units, constantly working together, communicating, and fighting to keep you breathing.
Okay, so here's the roadmap for our body's metropolis. We're going to cover the ocean inside us, the magic of homeostasis, transporting the goods, supply and waste clearance, who is in charge, and finally, the feedback loops. Let's jump in.
Section 1. The ocean inside us, your internal environment. We first need to establish that all of these 40 trillion cells actually live in an internal ocean that protects them from the outside world. About 50 to 70% of your body is fluid, and while most of that is trapped inside your cells, about 1/3 of it sits right outside them, constantly bathing them.
And there's this really stark chemical contrast between these two fluids. The intracellular fluid, the stuff trapped inside your cells, is absolutely packed with potassium, magnesium, and phosphate. But the extracellular fluid on the outside is entirely different. It's loaded with sodium, chloride, oxygen, and glucose. The great 19th century French physiologist Claude Bernard famously called this extracellular fluid the milieu intérieur, or the internal environment, because every single cell in your body essentially lives in this exact same shared fluid environment.
Which brings us to Section 2, the magic of homeostasis, the ultimate hero. Because, think about it, if all your cells rely on that one shared ocean to survive, what happens if that ocean gets toxic, or too hot, or too acidic? Enter the process that keeps this internal ocean perfectly stable.
Homeostasis. The American physiologist Walter Cannon actually coined this term back in 1929. Homeostasis is the ultimate objective of essentially all the organs and tissues in your body. From your lungs down to your kidneys, every organ is fighting constantly, day and night, to keep your internal environment from shifting out of its ideal state.
To put this into perspective, let's look at just how incredibly fragile life really is. A mere 11-degree Fahrenheit bump in your body temperature will literally destroy your cells and cause death. A tiny, half-point drop in your blood's pH, lethal. If your potassium ion concentration drops below 1/3 of normal, you get paralyzed. If it doubles, your heart muscle gets severely depressed. You are always just a few degrees or a few decimal points away from catastrophe, which is exactly why homeostasis is absolutely vital. Moving on to Section 3, transporting the goods, the macro and micro highways. Now, to maintain these ridiculously strict limits, the body relies on a massive two-stage circulatory highway system. Extracellular fluid doesn't just sit there stagnant, it is in constant, rapid motion.
First up, we have the macro highway of vessels. The heart pumps blood through this entire circuit. And get this, at rest, all the blood in your body traverses this entire circuit an average of once every single minute. When you're extremely active, it can make that full trip up to 6 times a minute.
But zooming all the way down to the micro level, we see the second stage. Fluid and dissolved molecules are constantly bouncing and diffusing back and forth through tiny capillary pores. Because of this incredibly dense web of microvessels, almost no cell in your entire body is ever more than 50 micrometers away from its supply line, and ensures the whole internal ocean stays perfectly mixed and homogenized.
Section 4. Supply and waste clearance. The suppliers and the janitors. Because, a highway system is pretty much useless if the delivery trucks are empty or if the garbage piles up on the streets.
Your lungs and your gastrointestinal tract act as the suppliers. They provide the raw materials like oxygen, carbohydrates, and amino acids. But just as importantly, the body has a world-class sanitation department. The lungs immediately breathe out carbon dioxide, while the liver detoxifies ingested chemicals and modifies substances.
And the kidneys, they act as these ultimate meticulous filters, scrubbing the blood plasma to reabsorb exactly what you need while excreting metabolic waste like urea and excess ions in the urine. It totally prevents lethal accumulation.
But here's a wild fact for you. We actually don't do this alone. Your internal metropolis relies heavily on external contractors. The gastrointestinal tract alone contains somewhere between 400 and 1,000 species of microorganisms. These microbes literally outnumber our human cells. Most of the time, they live in perfect harmony with us, providing vital functions for digestion, nutrition, and immunity that are absolutely essential for our survival.
Section 5. Who is in charge? Command and control systems. Right, so with all these supply lines, waste removal systems, and microscopic contractors running simultaneously, there has to be a command center coordinating the entire metropolis, right? Without control, it would just be utter chaos.
Basically, your body uses two main command systems. The nervous system, which is your sensors, brain, and spinal cord, provides rapid, immediate adjustments. A huge part of this is the autonomic system, working completely subconsciously to control things like your heart rate and organ functions. Then you have the hormone or endocrine system. These glands secrete chemical managers directly into the extracellular fluid to regulate long-term cellular metabolism, like insulin controlling glucose, or thyroid hormones setting the whole tempo of your bodily activity. They work together beautifully.
Section 6. The feedback loops. Correcting errors automatically. Which brings us to the real climax of this explainer. How exactly does this command center instantly correct a life-threatening error when it detects one? Well, the answer lies in the body's thousands of control systems.
Almost all of these control systems run on something called negative feedback. Let's take blood pressure as an example. If your blood pressure suddenly spikes, stretch sensors in your neck arteries, known as baroreceptors, detect that abnormal stretch. They instantly fire nerve impulses up to the medulla in your brain. The brain compares this incoming data to its ideal set point, realizes there's a dangerous error, and immediately uses the sympathetic nervous system to slow your heart down and dilate your blood vessels.
So looking at the mechanics of this negative feedback loop, you've basically got three main players: the sensor, the controller in the brain, and the effector. Now, it's called negative feedback because the body's response is inherently negative or opposite to the initiating stimulus. The stimulus was high pressure, the response creates lower pressure, driving it right back down to normal. And of course, if the pressure drops too low, the exact opposite happens to raise it back up.
We can actually measure how fiercely your body defends itself using a mathematical concept called gain. It's essentially the amount of correction divided by the remaining error. A high-gain system, like the one regulating your body temperature when you step out into the cold, works incredibly aggressively to prevent catastrophic changes. So, the higher the gain, the more fiercely your body defends its normal state.
Now, you might be wondering, why does the body almost exclusively use negative feedback? Well, because the alternative, positive feedback, can be incredibly dangerous. Positive feedback amplifies the initiating stimulus. For instance, if you suffer a sudden massive loss of 2 liters of blood, your arterial pressure drops. Because of that drop, less blood flows to the heart muscle itself. The heart weakens. And because it's weak, it pumps even less blood, which drops the pressure further, weakening the heart even more. It triggers a vicious cycle that just repeats until death. Positive feedback leads to profound instability. But actually, scratch that. Positive feedback isn't all bad. The body cleverly harnesses this explosive amplification for a few vital, finite processes. Take blood clotting. When a vessel tears, activated clotting enzymes trigger more enzymes, which trigger even more, in a runaway positive feedback loop, until the hole is completely plugged. That same explosive amplification is used to trigger powerful uterine contractions during childbirth, and it's exactly how an electrical action potential fires down a nerve fiber. So the body uses the danger of positive feedback as a powerful tool, but it always wraps it within a larger negative feedback system to keep the whole thing under control.
One thing to keep in mind here, when we talk about all these tightly controlled baseline numbers, a normal internal environment is actually constantly adapting. We often use an average 70-kilogram male for simplicity, but baseline physiological variables vary widely depending on your age, your specific body weight, diet, sex, and your unique genetics. Total body water, for instance, naturally decreases as we age. Your control systems are perfectly tailored to you, and they continually adapt over your lifetime.
Which brings us to our conclusion. We've seen how beautifully the body orchestrates survival, using 40 trillion cells, rapid transit highways, and incredibly intricate negative feedback loops. But I want to leave you with a provocative thought. If our bodies are this exquisitely tuned to fight for our survival and maintain homeostasis, what happens when a chronic disease actually hijacks these very compensations? Sometimes, the very trade-offs the body makes to survive an initial injury can contribute to long-term abnormalities. Exploring how these brilliant life-saving systems behave when pushed to their absolute limits is the fascinating foundation of pathophysiology, and honestly, a perfect topic for a future explainer. Thanks so much for exploring the incredible balancing act of the human body with me. Keep learning and stay curious.